All right. Well, with the Oscars over, we want to touch base on one more movie that we haven't covered yet, but we talked a lot about in the Oscar special. So, All Quiet on the Western Front is this week's episode.
Yeah, so stick around and we'll tell you why we think you should watch it. Let's jump right into it. We're going to be talking about All Quiet on the Western Front. This is a World War I film, and but I think it stands out a little bit different than just being a war film.
Yeah. I'm just going to start off by saying I'm not a war movie fanatic. I've seen a fair amount of them, but I really feel like this was probably one of the better ones that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it showed like a cool dynamic between the soldiers and the people actually kind of overseeing the war, your generals and lieutenants and, you know, all those big people. So you get to see them not being in a rush to like stop anything because they're not the ones out there dying. And then you get to see the characters of these. It's basically four main characters we get to see that get dropped into war, and
then there's that additional person that they meet so there's kind of five, but one of them dies basically the first night of the war. So it's four. It's back down to four. Uh-huh. Like all war movies, the characters kind of seem to disappear.
Yeah, but essentially you're following Paul, who in the beginning of the movie, his parents wouldn't sign off for him to become a soldier. And so
he was a minor, right? Is that why?
Yeah, he had to get permission. And the other three friends are all super excited because they get to serve their country. And Paul's like, I wasn't able to get my parents to sign off. And so they kind of peer pressured him into joining in because, you know, you're serving your country. And so, bam, Paul forges that signature. And everyone's super excited.
Well, this movie does a lot of things really well. One of them being showing like government propaganda on how governments coax people to get amped up and, you know, just want to get into that war zone. And then followed up by showing how
the reality of war
misrepresented, the war really was to these kids and how, you know, lied to they were, and then realizing, oh man, this sucks.
They're thrown straight into trench warfare, and immediately the friend that pressured Paul into signing, not that he didn't do it on his own will, but pressured him. He goes, man, I'm so sorry. This isn't anything like I thought it was going to be. They go from really clean and fresh immediately into a wet, war-torn, just disgusting environment. Like, it's not comfortable at all. Like, if you can imagine just being in a trench and you're just soaked and your boots are soaked. And then on top of that, you're having, to deal with everything else going on.
And also, when they were getting their uniforms, you could tell how, you know, rose-colored glasses vision they still had because they grab these uniforms and they're like, oh, this has someone else's name on there. This is someone else. And they're like, that's
they just tear the label off.
And they had like bullet holes and stuff in them stitched up, and they don't realize like these were already worn by people that died in the war. And that's another thing that the movie did well, was from the get-go just showing the horrors of war, how many people are dying, and that the government just sees you as a number. Soon as you're dead, they'll strip you of your uniform, wash it, sew it up, throw a new tag on it, send it off to the next person who jumped in line.
Overall, production was amazing.
When it comes to war movies, you have to have beautiful cinematography in order to make people want to watch, because why else would you want to watch the horrors of war?
I wonder how military people who've like served in the military view these war movies that have experienced the tragedy and trauma that comes with it. Like, do they enjoy war movies, or
I want to know how veterans feel about the beauty that they portray, you know, with the sweeping landscapes, and there's smoke coming through and diffused lighting and just these gorgeous camera angles and like in no way is war beautiful, yet these movies are beautifully made. So yeah, I wonder, how does a vet feel looking at it? Are they angry about it? Or if you're a vet, leave us a comment. Let us know. I'm curious.
Yeah, for sure. I'd totally be interested to hear that from a perspective of somebody that's been through it, because we're all excited. There's explosions going on. There's gunfire coming on. There's close calls and stuff. There's people getting ran over by tanks and all that, and all that. And, it's exciting for us, but I can imagine how terrifying it is.
The other thing that the movie did really well was portray the terror that these soldiers now feel. The best scene, I think, of the entire movie that portrayed that was when they're standing there on the lines. They got their heads popped up and their rifles aiming down, and all of a sudden you hear this low rumble, and the tanks just come through the smoke. And you got to realize this is the first time tanks were used ever. Like these kids probably didn't know tanks existed, and they're staring down the barrel. Their sergeant, whatever, says, "Everybody down," and then goes off. Then followed up by, after they the tanks are rolling over them and they're screaming their heads off because they're so scared. One person gets crushed by the tracks. Then when the tanks are gone finally, then the people come through with flamethrowers. Another thing that hasn't been used in a war, and they probably don't know exists, and they see people running out of the trenches on fire. So that whole scene just...
And it just really showcased the brutality of war. And man, somebody had to think about that. If we're going to go to war, we're going to make these flamethrowers so that way we can just torch people down. And it's just kind of sad when you really think about it.
Yeah, another thing that they did really well was, at the very end, they're like, you know what? Screw that treaty thing, the ceasefire and all that. We're going to attack them anyways. And they have to go back to the front lines, and they're fighting it because if the war is supposed to end at 11 a.m. And they're like, 10:45, we're going to attack them. And they bust through and they do all this killing and all this stuff. And then it's 11 o'clock. All right, everybody go home.
But it also showed the humanity at that point too, when everybody just stops. You're face to face with an enemy. It's like, it's a little weird. I don't know if that really kind of happened or if it's just a movie thing, but
it's kind of just like a football game. We just beat each other up for, however long this game lasted, but the whistle's over and all right, let's go to the locker room. Yeah. Let's go to Applebee's. Applebee's sponsor us.
One of my favorite moments though that happened, and kind of on the lines of that, but it's when Paul is, I think he's in this big old blown out hole or trench thing. It's all muddy, and he's faced with a French guy that he has to fight, and it's him or the French guy, and they're fighting in the mud and all that stuff, and then he's kind of forced to kill the guy.
And it was immediate. It was immediate. As soon as he had realized, oh crap, I basically just killed this guy. Now he's trying to apply pressure, trying to save him.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm sorry. And then obviously the guy passes away.
But then he has this flood of sadness in a way. And he goes through the guy's wallet and pulls out and sees pictures of his family. And in that moment, he realizes, man, what are we doing? We're all just people with families or loved ones at home, but we're all the same. And I felt that moment in there. Just that sadness kind of flood over him, being like, we are no different. We're just in a different country and we're being told we have to go fight each other. And that's all war ever is. It's weird that, but I like the humanity aspect of that. And I'm sure that goes through a lot of soldiers' minds, dealing with having killed someone and all that. So I thought it was cool to see that in a movie. That was just one of my favorite moments that stood out in the movie for me, was him realizing that we're all just people.
But overall, this movie, really really impressed me, because I'm not one to go out and actively want to watch war movies, but this one really really did it really well.
The movie did a great job with showing you the excitement, like you said, the propaganda of getting everybody excited. This, like, you should be serving your country, to the reality of war, the bonds that they share with fellow soldiers, and just really connecting. And even if it's just reading a letter from your spouse to the other person or their spouse to them, it's cool to see those bonds. It's cool to have those slow moments where it's not all just action and war, but just seeing the bonding of friends and new people coming into their squad and really helping each other through that. But then also kind of just showing the sadness of how soldiers are looked at as just pawns in the grand scheme of this power control. Like I said, where you could see the soldiers versus the generals, lieutenants, and whoever's actually running the war and then barking out the orders because they're not the ones on the front line. So I think the whole movie did an amazing job with that. And if you like war movies, I think this is one you should for sure check out. And it's free on Netflix, so you can't lose. And it's got some Oscar wins. Yeah. But again, we think you should go watch All Quiet on the Western Front. That's it for this episode. Make sure you like and subscribe and do all the things we like you to do. But also, we have other Oscar specials, so if you're interested in other Oscar movies like The Whale, Triangle of Sadness, Banshees of Inisherin, and Everything Everywhere All at Once, go check them out if you're interested in other Oscar films that we loved. Until next time, peace.